Welcome to Daily Bible Stories. Subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss a story. Let's dive in.
In the beginning, nothing. Then God speaks, and everything explodes into being. Let there be light, Genesis 1:3, and light slices through the darkness. He pulls sky from sea, lifts land from water. Mountains rise, rivers rush, forests whisper. He hangs the sun by day, the moon and stars by night. The seas churn with fish, the skies flutter with birds, the earth roams with every creature imaginable. And then, his masterpiece, let us make man in our image, Genesis 1:26. He forms Adam from the dust, breathes life into his lungs. Man becomes a living soul. God plants a garden called Eden, paradise itself. Rivers flow, trees bloom, and right in the center, two special trees. The tree of life and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. God says, you can eat anything here except that one tree. Touch it, and you will surely die. Genesis 2:17. Adam tends the garden, but he's alone. God sends a deep sleep, takes a rib, and crafts Eve. Not from dust, but from Adam's own flesh. When Adam sees her, he sings, "This is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh." Genesis 2:23. Together they live free, naked and unashamed, walking daily with God himself. But into the garden slithers a shadow. The serpent, more cunning than any beast, whispers, "Did God really say you can't eat from any tree?" Genesis 3:1. Eve listens. Adam stays silent. The fruit, beautiful, forbidden, hangs between them. They take, they bite. In an instant their eyes are opened, and not to glory but to shame. They stitch fig leaves to cover their nakedness and hide from the voice they once loved. God walks through the garden calling, "Where are you?" Genesis 3:9. The confrontation is swift. Blame shifts. Eve blames the serpent. Adam blames Eve. But judgment falls on all. The serpent is cursed, destined to crawl and to one day be crushed by the woman's offspring. Genesis 3:15. Eve will suffer in childbirth. Adam will toil by the sweat of his brow. The ground itself is cursed. Death enters the world. And with broken hearts, God clothes them in animal skins. A sacrifice is made. And he drives them out of Eden, flaming swords blocking the way back to the tree of life. Paradise is lost, but hope is not dead. Even as he sends them out, God leaves a promise burning behind them. One day, a Savior will come. After Eden, humanity spirals fast. Cain kills Abel, the first murder, Genesis 4. Sin multiplies. Violence fills the earth. By Genesis 6, it says, "Every intention of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually." Genesis 6:5. God sees. God grieves. God decides it's time to wipe the slate clean. But one man stands out, Noah. Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord. Genesis 6:8. He's not perfect, but he walks with God. God gives Noah crazy instructions. Build an ark, not a canoe, not a raft, a massive 3-story ship, big enough for animals, supplies, and Noah's whole family. While Noah builds, the people laugh. Decades pass, hammering, sawing, warning. Still, the people mock. Still, they sin. Then the day comes. Animals flood into the ark. 2 by 2, clean animals, by 7s. Noah's family enters. God himself shuts the door, Genesis 7:16. And then, the skies rip open. Rain pours down. The earth's foundations burst. Floodwaters rise and rise, covering mountains, swallowing valleys. Every living thing outside the ark perishes. For 40 days and 40 nights, rain hammers the earth. Then, slowly, the waters begin to recede. After months floating on endless ocean, Noah sends out a raven. It circles but finds no rest. Then a dove, it returns with nothing. Later he sends it again, and it comes back with an olive leaf in its beak. Genesis 8:11. Finally, God tells Noah, "Come out of the ark." Genesis 8:16. Noah steps onto dry ground and immediately builds an altar, offering sacrifices in worship. God smells the offering and makes a promise. Never again will I destroy all living creatures as I have done. Genesis 8:21. He seals it with a sign stretched across the sky and the first rainbow, a covenant of mercy. And God blesses Noah and his sons, saying, "Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth." Genesis 9:1. But even after the flood, sin still lingers in human hearts. A new beginning, but still waiting for the final rescue. After the flood, humanity starts over. Noah's sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, spread out and have children. The nations are born, Genesis 10. But instead of filling the earth like God commanded, the people cluster together. They find a wide, flat plain in a land called Shinar and hatch a plan. Come, let us build ourselves a city and a tower with its top in the heavens, and let us make a name for ourselves. Genesis 11:4. They don't want to glorify God. They want to glorify themselves. They want a kingdom built on pride. Brick by brick, the tower rises, higher and higher, ambition stretching toward the heavens. It's humanity's first rebellion after the flood, a monument of defiance. But God sees. Behold, they are one people. Nothing that they propose to do will now be impossible for them. Genesis 11:6. God steps in, not with fire, not with a flood, but with confusion. In a moment, languages shatter. Builders can't understand each other. Orders are scrambled. Chaos erupts. The construction stops cold. The people scatter across the earth, exactly what God had commanded from the start. The city is left unfinished, its towering ambition abandoned. They call it Babel, which sounds like confusion. Man tried to build his way up to heaven. Instead, heaven came down and humbled him. God chooses Abram, an ordinary man from Ur, and slaps him with an extraordinary mission. Get out of your comfort zone. Leave your home, your people, your gods, and follow me. Genesis 12:1. No hesitation, no negotiation. Abram obeys. He picks up his life, says goodbye to the familiar, and heads for an unknown land. God's promise is huge. I will make you a great nation, bless you, make your name great. Genesis 12:2. Fast forward, and Abram's in Canaan. He and his wife Sarai travel, but a famine hits. So what does Abram do? He panics and heads to Egypt, but fears for his life, thinking the Egyptians will kill him for Sarai's beauty. So he lies, claiming Sarai is his sister, half true. Pharaoh takes her, but God slaps some plagues on Egypt, revealing the truth. Pharaoh kicks them out with riches in hand. Abram returns to Canaan with wealth, and trouble isn't far behind. His herds and Lot's herds are so big, the land can't support them both. So what does Abram do? He lets Lot choose. Lot picks the plains of Sodom, fertile, rich, but deep in wickedness. Abram settles in the Canaan mountains, and God reminds him, "Look around you. All this land will be yours and your descendants forever." Genesis 13, numbered 14, 15. Then war breaks out. 4 kings attack the 5 kings of Sodom and Gomorrah. Lot's caught in the middle, taken captive. What does Abram do? He leads a small army of his trained men to rescue his nephew. They charge in, fight, and win. Lot's freed, and Abram refuses the spoils of victory. No glory for himself, just honor for God. After the battle, Melchizedek, the priest king of Salem, meets Abram with bread and wine and blesses him. Blessed be Abram by God Most High. Genesis 14:19. Abram responds by giving 1/10 of everything he has, his wealth, his victory, his first fruits. The war is over, but a deeper covenant with God is being sealed. Want to know what happens next? Brace yourself for the covenant of God with Abram. Genesis 15:17. A blood covenant, a name change, and the sign of circumcision. Things are about to get deep, and the promises are only going to get bigger. Are you ready for God's unshakable promise to Abram and his descendants? The next chapter is a game changer. Let's keep this story rolling. God's covenant with Abram, Genesis 15 to 17. God hits Abram with big promises. Look at the stars. Your descendants will be more than this. Genesis 15:5. Abram's like, how, God? I'm old, my wife's old, and we have no kids. But God doesn't just talk. He walks the walk. God cuts a covenant with Abram, a blood promise, a promise of land, descendants, and blessing. I am the Lord who brought you out of Ur of the Chaldeans to give you this land to take possession of it. Genesis 15:7. God swears it. Abram believes, even if he doesn't see it yet. But Abram still wonders, when God? God tells him to bring sacrifices, a heifer, a goat, a ram, a dove, a pigeon. He cuts them in half. God's fire moves through the pieces, sealing the covenant. To your descendants I give this land. Genesis 15:18. A blood covenant, and it's unbreakable. Genesis 16. Sarai loses patience. She's old and barren, and it's been years since God's promise. So she gives Abram her maid, Hagar, to have a child. Hagar gets pregnant, and Sarai gets jealous. Big mistake. Hagar runs away, but an angel finds her and promises her son Ishmael will be the father of a great nation. Sarai's plan backfires, but Ishmael's line will still be blessed. But God's promise will come through Sarai, not Hagar. Genesis 17. God shows up and drops the biggest bombshell yet. He changes Abram's name to Abraham, father of many nations. Sarai becomes Sarah, the mother of nations. God promises Isaac, a son born to Sarah, even though they're way past the age of having kids. Abraham laughs at the thought. How could this happen? But God seals the deal with circumcision, the mark of the covenant. This is the sign of the covenant between me and you. Genesis 17:11. Abraham's descendants will carry this mark, and through Isaac, God's promise will come true. Big takeaway. God has just sealed his promise with Abraham, a covenant that will shape the future of the world. But it's not just about a name or a land. It's about a plan for blessing and salvation that will outlive generations. What's next? The promise is set. The child Isaac is on the way. But first, we're diving into the birth of Isaac and the destruction of Sodom. It's time for Genesis 18 to 19. Get ready for God's judgment and Abraham's intercession. Don't miss it. The drama intensifies. Let's roll. Genesis 18. Abraham is chilling in the heat of the day when three mysterious visitors show up. Not just random travelers. It's God himself and two angels. Abraham jumps to serve them. Bread, meat, milk, old school hospitality. Then the bomb drops. This time next year, Sarah will have a son. Genesis 18:10. Sarah, eavesdropping behind the tent door, laughs. She's 90 years old and Abraham's 100. Pregnancy seems laughably impossible, but God calls her out. Is anything too hard for the Lord? Genesis 18:14. Mic drop. The visitors move on. Destination, Sodom. God confides in Abraham. I am going to investigate Sodom and Gomorrah. Their sin is crying out to me. Abraham steps up, bold and raw. He bargains with God. Will you really wipe away the righteous with the wicked? What if there are 50 righteous? 45, 40, 30, 20, 10? God promises. If even 10 righteous people are found, he'll spare the city. Genesis 19. The two angels arrive in Sodom. Lot, Abraham's nephew, welcomes them in. But the city's wickedness shows up fast. The men of Sodom surround Lot's house, demanding the visitors be handed over for abuse. Lot refuses, even offering his daughters instead, a sign of just how broken this place has become. The angels yank Lot inside, strike the mob with blindness, and warn him, "Get out, now, God's judgment is coming." Lot hesitates, seriously, but the angels drag him, his wife and daughters out by the hand. God rains down fire and sulfur, total destruction. wiping Sodom and Gomorrah off the map. Lot's wife looks back, longing for the life she's losing, and turns into a pillar of salt. Lesson? When God says flee, don't look back. Lot ends up hiding in a cave with his daughters. And from there, two nations are born through tragic choices: the Moabites and the Ammonites. Big takeaway: when God promises, He delivers. When sin reaches its peak, He judges. Faith saves. Disobedience destroys. Abraham trusted God's promise for a son even when it sounded insane. Lot's hesitation almost cost him everything. God's mercy is real, but so is His judgment. Next up, the long-awaited birth of Isaac is just around the corner. Genesis 20:21. A miracle baby, a test of faith, and more drama than ever. Get ready, the story is about to explode with destiny. Shall we dive straight into the next chapter? Genesis 20. Abraham, still moving through the land, stops in Gerar. Old habit kicks in. He lies again, saying Sarah is his sister. Seriously, Abraham? Again? King Abimelech takes Sarah, but before anything happens, God shows up in a dream like a boss. You're as good as dead if you touch her. Genesis 23. Abimelech pleads innocence. God listens, and Abraham prays for him. Sarah is restored, Abimelech is blessed, and Abraham walks away richer again. Lesson: even when Abraham messes up, God's promise stands. Mercy, mistakes. Genesis 21. The miracle finally happens. At 100 years old, Abraham laughs with pure joy as Isaac, meaning he laughs, is born. Sarah laughs too, but this time it's a laugh of wonder, not doubt. God has brought me laughter, and everyone who hears about this will laugh with me. Genesis 21:6. The promise has come to life. But drama brews fast. Hagar's son, Ishmael, mocks Isaac at the feast celebrating his weaning. Sarah snaps. Get rid of that slave woman and her son. Genesis 21:10. It sounds harsh, but God backs Sarah's demand. Ishmael must go. Isaac is the child of the covenant. Heartbroken, Abraham sends Hagar and Ishmael into the desert. When all seems lost, God hears Ishmael's cries. He provides water and promises Ishmael a future, a nation of his own. Ishmael grows up strong, becoming an archer and the father of many descendants. Meanwhile, Abraham's influence grows. He makes a treaty with Abimelech over a well at Beersheba, sealing his place in the land. Big takeaway: God's promises are never late. They come at the perfect time. Faith isn't just about waiting. It's about trusting when it looks impossible. And even when division happens, Isaac versus Ishmael, God's mercy never misses anyone. Next up, one of the most gut-wrenching, faith-defining moments in all Scripture, the testing of Abraham. Genesis 22. Abraham's greatest joy, Isaac, will be placed on the altar. Will he trust God even when it costs him everything? Get ready. It's about to get intense. Shall we charge ahead? Genesis 22. After all the promises, all the waiting, all the laughter, God tests Abraham in the most brutal way imaginable. Abraham, here I am, Abraham replies. God commands, take your son, your only son Isaac, whom you love, and sacrifice him on a mountain I will show you. Genesis 22:2. No argument, no delay. Early the next morning, Abraham saddles his donkey, chops wood for the offering, and heads out with Isaac and 2 servants. 3 days' journey, 3 days of silent, crushing tension. At the mountain, Abraham tells the servants, stay here, we will worship and we will come back. Notice, we will come back. Isaac carries the wood. Abraham carries the fire and the knife. Isaac asks the heartbreaking question. Father, where is the lamb for the burnt offering? Genesis 22:7. Abraham, voice probably shaking, God will provide. They reach the spot. Abraham builds the altar, arranges the wood, ties up Isaac, his miracle son, and lays him on the altar. He raises the knife. one heartbeat away from the unthinkable, when God thunders from heaven, "Abraham, Abraham, do not lay a hand on the boy." Genesis 22:11-12. A ram is caught by its horns in a nearby thicket. Abraham sacrifices the ram instead. He names the place, "The Lord will provide." Yahweh Yireh. God doubles down on the promise. "Because you have not withheld your son, your only son, I will surely bless you. And through your offspring, all nations on earth will be blessed." Genesis 22:16-18. Big takeaway. Real faith doesn't just trust God for blessings, it trusts God even when it hurts. Abraham passed the ultimate test. He was willing to surrender his everything. And because of that, he became the father of a faith that would change the world. Next up, life moves forward, but not without sorrow. Sarah's death, Isaac's future, and the next generation of promises are on the horizon. Get ready for Genesis 23-24. Love, loss, and the search for a bride. Ready to keep charging forward? Genesis 23. After years of wild faith journeys, Sarah, Abraham's beloved wife, dies at 127 years old in Hebron. Heartbroken, Abraham mourns, but he doesn't just grieve, he acts. He needs a burial place, not just a borrowed tomb. He negotiates with the Hittites for the cave of Machpelah, refusing to take it as a gift. He insists on paying full price, 400 shekels of silver, securing permanent ownership in the land God promised. Sarah becomes the first to be buried in the promised land. It is not just a burial, it is a claim of faith. This land will one day be ours. Genesis 24. Now Abraham's focus shifts. Isaac needs a wife, but not from Canaan. He sends his chief servant, likely Eliezer, back to his homeland to find a bride among his own people. Epic moment. The servant prays, "Lord, let the right woman offer water to me, and to my camels." Genesis 24:14. Before he finishes praying, boom, Rebekah shows up. She offers water to him and his camels, which would have meant drawing about 300 gallons by hand. Rebekah, hard powerhouse. God's fingerprint is all over this. He gives Rebekah gifts, meets her family, and explains the whole mission. Rebekah's family agrees, but they ask her, "Will you go?" Rebekah, no hesitation. "I will go." Genesis 24:58. Bold faith, just like Abraham. They journey back. Isaac is out in the fields meditating, and when he lifts his eyes, love at first sight. Rebekah veils herself. Isaac brings her into Sarah's tent, and she becomes his wife. He loves her. She comforts his grieving heart. Big takeaway. When God writes the story, he moves hearts, opens doors, and orchestrates impossible connections. Faith steps out, even when the future is unseen. Rebekah's yes becomes the next chapter of the promise. Next up, new generation, new challenges. The birth of Jacob and Esau, and the rise of the next chosen one. Genesis 25:26 is loaded with rivalry, destiny, and blessing battles. You ready? Because it's about to get even messier and more miraculous. Shall we dive straight into it? Genesis 25. Abraham remarries Keturah and has more sons, but Isaac stays the heir of the covenant. Then Abraham dies at 175 years old, full of years and blessed. Isaac and Ishmael reunite just long enough to bury him beside Sarah at Machpelah, the family tomb. But the torch has passed to Isaac. The promise runs through him, not the others. Isaac and Rebekah face their own struggle, 20 years of waiting, praying, hoping for a child. Finally, Rebekah conceives, but it's violent inside her. She cries out to God, and he reveals, "Two nations are in your womb, the older will serve the younger." Genesis 25:23. The twins are born. Esau, red, hairy, wild, a hunter. Jacob, grabbing Esau's heel, a fighter even at birth. Esau grows up impulsive and rugged. Jacob stays near home, patient and cunning. And then the first blow falls. Esau comes in, hungry from the fields. Jacob offers stew, but at a savage price. Sell me your birthright. Genesis 25:31. Shockingly, Esau trades his future for a bowl of soup. What good is my birthright if I die of hunger? Just like that, the firstborn blessing slips through Esau's fingers. Genesis 26. Isaac faces a famine and heads toward Egypt, but God stops him. Stay in the land I tell you. I will bless you here. Genesis 20. Isaac obeys. But like his father, fear gets him. He tells the locals that Rebekah is his sister. Again, Abraham's old trick. King Abimelech sees them getting cozy and calls him out. But instead of punishing Isaac, God blesses him massively. Isaac becomes filthy rich, crops, herds, wealth exploding, so much that the Philistines envy him and plug up his wells. Isaac keeps moving, reopening the ancient wells his father dug. Every time there's conflict, he moves again, peace over fight. Finally, he digs a well. No one fights him and names it Rehoboth. Now the Lord has given us room, and we will flourish in the land. Genesis 26:22. At Beersheba, God appears again, promising blessing. Isaac builds an altar and worships, the flame of faith burning through the generations. Meanwhile, Esau keeps making impulsive decisions, marrying Hittite women and breaking his parents' hearts. Big takeaway. Destiny is shaped by choices, not appearances. Esau squandered his future for temporary hunger. Jacob, despite his flaws, valued the birthright, and that mattered to God. Obedience under pressure, like Isaac during famine, leads to explosive blessing. Next up, it's time for one of the biggest heist stories ever, Jacob's deception to steal Esau's blessing. Genesis 27 will blow the roof off. Betrayal, blessing, and destiny colliding in the rawest way yet. Ready to step into the chaos? Let's go if you're in. Genesis 27. Isaac is old, nearly blind, and sensing death is near. He calls his rugged firstborn Esau. Hunt some game and prepare me a meal. Then I'll bless you before I die. Genesis 27:4. But Rebekah, listening nearby, hatches a daring plan. She's always known Jacob was God's chosen one. Now she's going to make sure he gets the blessing. She pulls Jacob aside. Go get 2 young goats. I'll cook a meal like your father loves. You'll dress like Esau and steal the blessing. Jacob hesitates. What if he touches me? I'll get cursed instead. Rebekah. Let the curse fall on me. Just do what I say. Genesis 27:13. They move fast. Rebekah dresses Jacob in Esau's clothes. She wraps goat skins on Jacob's hands and neck to mimic Esau's hairy skin. She hands him the food and sends him to Isaac. Jacob stands before his father, heart racing, and bold-faced lies. I am Esau. Isaac is suspicious. The voice is Jacob's, but the hands are Esau's. Genesis 27:22. He feels the hairy disguise, smells Esau's clothes, and finally gives in. Isaac pours out the irrevocable blessing. Wealth, nations bowing down, brothers serving Jacob. Curses on anyone who curses him, blessings on those who bless him. A blessing meant for Esau, now resting on Jacob. Just as Jacob leaves, Esau storms in, meal ready, eager for his blessing. Isaac trembles violently when he realizes he's been tricked. Your brother came deceitfully and took your blessing. Genesis 27:35. Esau breaks down, wailing, Bless me! Me too, Father! But it's too late. The blessing can't be undone. Isaac gives Esau a secondary blessing, one of struggle and service. Esau's heart hardens. He plots revenge. I'll kill Jacob after our father dies. Rebekah catches wind of it and sends Jacob fleeing to her brother Laban in Haran. Jacob is now exiled, running for his life. The blessing bought at the cost of betrayal. Big takeaway. Destiny is messy. God's promises come true, but sometimes through flawed, broken, desperate human moves. Faith wins, but it often limps with guilt and scars. Next up, Jacob's wilderness journey begins. Dreams of heaven, angels on ladders, and a runaway becomes a patriarch. Genesis 28 is next, a chapter of revelation, promises, and a holy encounter that changes everything. Ready to keep racing forward? Let's keep the fire burning! Genesis 28. Jacob is on the run, fleeing for his life, alone, ashamed, and heading toward Haran. No family, no promises of safety, just the stolen blessing burning in his back pocket. He stops for the night in the middle of nowhere, grabs a stone for a pillow, and collapses under the stars. That's when God breaks in. Jacob dreams, and it's not just any dream. He sees a stairway, ladder, stretching from earth to heaven. Angels are moving up and down, and God himself stands at the top. God speaks, "I am the Lord, the God of Abraham and Isaac. I will give you this land. Your descendants will spread out like dust. All nations will be blessed through you. I am with you and will watch over you wherever you go." Genesis 28, 13 to 15. No rebuke. No, how dare you steal? Only grace, only promise. Jacob wakes up stunned. Surely the Lord is in this place and I was not aware of it. Genesis 28:16. Terror and awe grip him. He renames the spot Bethel, house of God. He sets up the stone as a pillar and vows, "If God will be with me, the Lord will be my God." Jacob's faith is still raw, still bargaining, but it's a beginning. The God of Abraham and Isaac is now starting to become the God of Jacob too. Big takeaway, even when you're running, even when you're broken, God meets you in the middle of nowhere. His promises chase you down, even when you think you've ruined everything. The place of failure and fear can become the place of destiny and dreams. Next up, Jacob arrives in Haran, but this won't be a holiday. Hard labor, love stories, trickery, and new beginnings are about to explode. Genesis 29:30 are coming. Jacob versus Laban, Rachel versus Leah, and the birth of the 12 tribes. Buckle up. It's about to get wild, messy, and miraculous. Ready to keep charging forward? Genesis 29:30. Jacob finally reaches Haran, and just like destiny scripted, he meets Rachel at a well. She's beautiful, bold, and strong, and Jacob is smitten instantly. He kisses her, weeps out loud, and meets her father, Laban, Rebekah's brother. Jacob offers to work 7 years for Rachel's hand in marriage. 7 years fly by like days because of his love for her, Genesis 29:20. But on the wedding night, boom, Laban tricks him. He slips in Leah, Rachel's older sister, under the wedding veil and darkness. Jacob wakes up, sees Leah next to him, and flips out. "What is this you have done to me?" Genesis 29:25. Laban shrugs. "In our country, the older daughter must marry first, work another 7 years, and you can have Rachel too." A total bait and switch. Jacob agrees, and suddenly he's caught in family drama. Olo 1, 2 wives, 2 sisters, constant rivalry. Leah, unloved but fertile, births 4 sons almost immediately. Reuben means see, a son. Simeon, herd. Levi, attached. Judah, praise. Each name is Leah screaming for Jacob's love. But it's not happening. Meanwhile, Rachel is barren and furious. She lashes out at Jacob. "Give me children or I'll die." Genesis 31. Rachel gives Jacob her maid, Bilhah, and through her has 2 sons, Dan, judged, Naphtali, my struggle. Not to be outdone, Leah gives Jacob her maid, Zilpah, who adds 2 more sons, Gad, good fortune, Asher, happy. It's a full-on baby war. Then, twist, Leah bears Issachar and Zebulun, and a daughter, Dinah. Finally, after years of heartbreak, God remembers Rachel. She conceives and gives birth to Joseph, may he add, the dreamer who will one day save nations. All this chaos, all this rivalry, all these sons, the 12 tribes of Israel are being born in the middle of messy, human, complicated lives. And Jacob is learning. You can't outrun trickery when you yourself were once the trickster. Big takeaway. God builds his greatest works not out of perfection, but out of messy, broken, desperate people. The dream looks chaotic now, but a nation is being shaped one painful step at a time. Next up, Jacob's story is far from over. Now it's time for revenge against Laban, divine deals with flocks, and Jacob finally becoming his own man. Genesis 30:25-31 is next. Wild deals, explosive growth, and the slow road home. You ready to charge into Jacob's next round of battles? Let's go full throttle. Genesis 30:25-31-55. After Joseph's birth, Jacob's heart shifts. He's tired of building Laban's empire. It's time to build his own. Jacob tells Laban, "Send me back home. Let me provide for my own household." Genesis 30:25-26. But sly old Laban isn't about to lose his golden goose. "Name your wages," he says, desperate to keep the blessing Jacob brings. Jacob sets a genius trap. "Give me all the speckled, spotted, and dark-colored sheep and goats. They'll be my wages." The rarest, least desirable animals. Laban eagerly agrees and immediately removes all the speckled and spotted animals to stack the deck against Jacob. But Jacob outplays the player. He uses sticks, water troughs, and selective breeding tricks to strengthen his flock. While Laban's pure animals weaken, Jacob's speckled and spotted herds explode. Jacob becomes filthy rich, huge herds, servants, camels, donkeys. God is behind the scenes, flipping Laban's dirty deals right back onto his own head. Then God speaks to Jacob in a dream. "I have seen all that Laban has done to you. Now leave this land and return to your homeland." Genesis 31:12-13. Jacob knows the time has come. Secretly, he packs up everything, wives, children, flocks, and flees without telling Laban. 3 days later, Laban finds out, and he's furious. He chases Jacob down with men, ready to drag him back by force. But God steps in, warning Laban in a dream. "Be careful not to say anything to Jacob, either good or bad." Genesis 31:24. When they meet, it's tense. Laban accuses Jacob of theft, of kidnapping his daughters. Jacob fires back, pouring out 20 years of pent-up frustration. 14 years for Rachel and Leah, 6 years for the flocks. Constant cheating and scheming from Laban. Jacob roars, "If the God of my father had not been with me, you would have sent me away empty-handed." Genesis 31:42. In the end, they make a covenant. They set up a stone pile called Mizpah, meaning watchtower, and agree, "May the Lord watch between you and me when we are apart." Genesis 31:49. Jacob is finally free, bruised but blessed, marching toward destiny. Big takeaway: no scheme can block what God has destined. When God says go, not even the strongest manipulator can hold you back. You may leave battered, but you leave blessed. Next up, Jacob is free, but he's got unfinished business. Esau is waiting. Forgiveness, fear, wrestling with God himself. Genesis 32:33 brings a life-or-death showdown, and the moment Jacob becomes Israel. This next one's gonna shake the heavens. Ready to leap into it? Let's roll. Genesis 32:33. Jacob's rolling out, free from Laban, but he knows a bigger storm is ahead. Esau, the brother he betrayed, the brother who once vowed to kill him. Jacob sends messengers to Esau with peace offerings, hoping to soften him up. But when the messengers return, they drop a bomb. Esau's coming, but with 400 men. Genesis 32:6. Jacob's heart melts with fear. He divides his camp, thinking, if Esau attacks one group, the other can escape. Then Jacob does what he should have done all along. He prays, "O God of my father Abraham, save me, I pray, from the hand of my brother." Genesis 32:9-11. That night, Jacob sends everyone, wives, children, possessions, across the river. He stays alone on the other side. Dark, silent, dread heavy in the air, and suddenly, someone attacks him. A man wrestles him all night. Jacob fights with every fiber of his being. This isn't normal. The man's strength is otherworldly. As dawn breaks, the man touches Jacob's hip, and it wrenches out of socket instantly. Still, Jacob won't let go. He clings to the man, broken and bleeding. "I will not let you go unless you bless me." Genesis 32:26. Then it hits. This wasn't just a man. Jacob has been wrestling God himself. God renames him. "Your name will no longer be Jacob, deceiver, but Israel, one who struggles with God and wins." Jacob limps away at sunrise, broken, blessed, and renamed. A new man. Next morning, Jacob limps toward Esau. He bows low to the ground 7 times as Esau approaches. But instead of rage, Esau runs to Jacob, embraces him, weeps on his neck. The brother he feared forgives him. They both weep. 2 brothers, 2 battered lives, healed by something far greater than human plans. Jacob insists Esau take his gifts, saying, "Seeing your face is like seeing the face of God." Genesis 33:10. A story that began in betrayal ends in forgiveness. Big takeaway: real transformation comes through the struggle. You can step into your destiny until you've wrestled with God and let Him break the old you. Brokenness is not the end. It's the beginning of becoming who you were born to be. Next up, Jacob settles in the land, but his troubles aren't over. Deception, revenge, and bloodshed are about to break out. Genesis 34, the tragedy of Dinah and Shechem, a dark, intense chapter. Get ready. The next story isn't pretty, but it's critical. Should we charge right into it? Let's hit it. The tragedy of Dinah, deception and massacre. Genesis 34. Jacob and his growing family settle near a city called Shechem. His daughter Dinah, curious about her new world, goes out to visit the local women. Disaster strikes. Shechem, the prince of the city, sees Dinah, seizes her, and violates her. Genesis 34:2. This is brutal, raw, and heartbreaking. But twistedly, Shechem falls in love with Dinah afterward. He begs his father, Hamor, to arrange a marriage. "Get me this girl as my wife." Genesis 34:4. Jacob hears what happened, but he stays silent until his sons return from the fields. When they do, fury explodes. Hamor comes to negotiate, offering peace. "Let our people and yours intermarry. We'll give you land, trade, and prosperity." But Jacob's sons, especially Simeon and Levi, are boiling with hidden rage. They plot. They deceive Hamor and Shechem. "Sure, we'll intermarry with you, but only if every male among you gets circumcised like us." Genesis 34:15. Desperate for Dinah, Shechem agrees. Every man in the city gets circumcised, a painful process that leaves them weak and defenseless. 3 days later, Simeon and Levi strike. They storm the city. They slaughter every male. They kill Shechem and Hamor. They rescue Dinah from Shechem's house. Then the other sons of Jacob join in, looting, pillaging, plundering, total annihilation. When Jacob hears what his sons have done, he's horrified. "You have brought trouble on me, making me obnoxious to the Canaanites and Perizzites." Genesis 34:30. But Simeon and Levi fire back coldly. "Should he have treated our sister like a prostitute?" Genesis 34:31. No one is innocent here. Dinah is shamed. Jacob's family is stained with blood. The land around them will never look at them the same again. Big takeaway. When justice is twisted into rage and revenge, it breeds only ruin. Human anger can never truly heal human wounds. It only multiplies the brokenness. Only God's justice restores. Anything else leaves destruction in its wake. Next up, it's time to move forward. God calls Jacob to return to Bethel, to build an altar, bury idols, and reignite the covenant. Genesis 35, a chapter of renewal, death, and destiny sharpened. Ready to march into the next firestorm? Let's roll right into it. Genesis 35. After the bloodbath at Shechem, danger hangs like a storm cloud. Jacob's family is now hated and hunted across the land. But God steps in. Go up to Bethel and settle there. Build an altar to God, who appeared to you when you fled from Esau. Genesis 35:1, Bethel, where Jacob first saw heaven open, the place of the first promise. Now it's time to come full circle. Before they move, Jacob takes a critical step. He tells his household, "Get rid of your foreign gods, purify yourselves, change your clothes." Genesis 35:2. Purge the idols, bury the past, step into destiny. They give Jacob all the foreign gods and earrings. Jacob buries them under an oak tree at Shechem, a literal funeral for their old life. Terror of God falls on the surrounding cities. No one dares to chase Jacob. When you move with God's covering, your enemies freeze. They reach Bethel. Jacob builds an altar, and God appears again, confirming the covenant. Your name is no longer Jacob, but Israel. A nation and a community of nations will come from you. Kings will descend from you. I will give you the land I promised to Abraham and Isaac. Genesis 35:9-12. This isn't just a blessing, it's a coronation. Israel is not just a man anymore. It's a nation in God's eyes. But even as destiny rises, sorrow strikes. Deborah, Rebekah's nurse, dies. Rachel, Jacob's beloved, goes into hard labor on the road to Ephrath, Bethlehem. She delivers a son, but her soul is slipping away. With her dying breath, she names him Ben-Oni, son of my sorrow. But Jacob, refusing to let death have the final word, renames him Benjamin, son of the right hand. Rachel is buried beside the road, and Jacob sets a stone over her grave, a memory of love and loss. Finally, after so much pain, Jacob comes home to his father Isaac in Mamre. Isaac lives to 180 years old, then dies peacefully, full of years. Esau and Jacob, once mortal enemies, bury their father together. The old generation passes. The torch of destiny is now fully in Jacob's hands. Big takeaway: you can't move into your future without burying your idols, burying your grief, and building your altar. Destiny costs everything, but it's worth everything. You don't just stumble into God's promises. You fight for them, grieve for them, and worship through the fire to claim them. Next up, before the next explosion, the Bible zooms out briefly. Genesis 36, the generations of Esau, Edom. A flash of history before we rocket into the life of Joseph, the dreamer, the slave, the ruler. It's almost Joseph time, and it's about to blow the roof off. You ready to smash into the next chapter? Genesis 36. Before we zero in on Joseph's wild, world-shaking journey, the Bible hits pause to lay down the generational map for Esau, Jacob's brother. Even though Esau lost the birthright and blessing, he still thrives. God keeps his promise to Abraham. "I will make nations come from you." Genesis 17:6. And Esau becomes the father of a fierce nation, Edom. Quick-fire facts. Esau marries multiple Canaanite women against family expectations. His wives include Adah, Oholibamah, and Basemath. They bear him sons, Eliphaz, Reuel, Jush, Jalam, and Korah, who explode into powerful clans. Eventually, Esau moves away from Jacob, settling in the rugged hills of Seir, because their possessions are too massive to share the same land. Genesis 36:7. Out of Esau comes kings, chiefs, and warriors long before Israel even has a king. Names flash like lightning. Taman, famous for wisdom, think Temanite, Job's friend. Amalek, who later becomes a major enemy of Israel. Magdiel, Iram, Kenaz, all future rulers. Edom becomes a real dominant nation, proud, fierce, and often hostile toward Israel. Quick reminder, later, Edom will clash bitterly with Israel, but today, they are still the bloodline of Abraham. Key vibe of Genesis 36. Even outside the covenant, God's word to Abraham is unstoppable. Nations are rising. History is shifting. Big takeaway. God's promises are bigger than individuals. Even when people fall, walk away, or miss their calling, the river of God's plan still flows, shaping nations and generations. Blessing and destiny are never random. their legacy moves. Next up, buckle up, because now we dive into the biggest roller coaster ride of Genesis, Joseph's dreams, betrayal, slavery, and the seeds of a global revolution. Genesis 37. This next story changes the fate of Israel, Egypt, and the world. You ready to crash straight into Joseph's dreams and disaster? Let's storm it! Genesis 37. Meet Joseph, Jacob's favorite son, the golden boy, born to Rachel in Jacob's old age. Jacob loves Joseph so much, he gives him a special robe, richly ornamented, screaming "Chosen One" wherever Joseph walks. Cue the jealousy. Joseph's brothers hate him, and Joseph doesn't help himself. He dreams, and he shares the dreams. First dream. We were binding sheaves of grain, and my sheaf stood upright while yours bowed down to mine. Genesis 37:7. Second dream. The sun, the moon, and 11 stars bowed down to me. Genesis 37:9. Even Jacob is like, "What is this dream you had? Will your mother and I and your brothers actually bow down to you?" The brothers burn with rage. They plot. One day, Jacob sends Joseph to check on them while they're tending flocks near Shechem. From a distance, they see him, that shining coat giving him away, and say, "Here comes that dreamer. Let's kill him." Genesis 37:19-20. Reuben, the oldest, steps in. "Let's not kill him. Just throw him into a pit." He secretly plans to rescue him later. They strip Joseph's prized robe and toss him into a dry cistern. Cold, alone, betrayed. But then, traders pass by, Ishmaelites heading to Egypt. Judah hatches a new plan. Why kill him? Let's sell him. So for 20 pieces of silver, they sell their own brother. Joseph is chained up and dragged toward Egypt, a slave. The brothers fake Joseph's death, dipping his robe in goat's blood and presenting it to Jacob. Jacob is shattered. "It is my son's robe. Some ferocious animal has devoured him." He tears his clothes. He mourns for days, refuses comfort. Meanwhile, Joseph arrives in Egypt, sold to Potiphar, captain of Pharaoh's guard. The dreamer's world has shattered, but God's story is just beginning. Big takeaway. Betrayal doesn't cancel destiny. It triggers it. The pit wasn't the end. It was the door to the palace. When people try to bury you, they're accidentally planting you. Next up, before Joseph rises, Genesis throws a shocking detour. Genesis 38, the scandal of Judah and Tamar, betrayal, deception, and an unexpected bloodline twist leading straight to Jesus. Ready to dive into one of the Bible's wildest and rawest side stories? Let's hit it full throttle. Genesis 38. While Joseph is dragged into Egypt, the story flashes sideways to his brother Judah and the choices that will shake the future. Judah leaves his brothers and marries a Canaanite woman, the daughter of Shua. They have 3 sons. Onan, Shelah, trouble hits fast. Judah arranges for to marry a woman named Tamar, but is so wicked that God strikes him dead. Genesis 38:7. According to ancient custom, Judah tells his second son, Onan, "Marry your brother's widow to raise up offspring for him." Onan doesn't want to create heirs that won't carry his name, so he selfishly uses Tamar but refuses to give her a child. God sees the wickedness and strikes Onan dead too. Genesis 38:10. Now Judah is spooked. He promises Tamar that when his youngest son, Shelah, grows up, she'll marry him. But deep down, Judah has no intention of keeping that promise. Time passes. Tamar waits. Shelah grows up. But Judah never calls for her. Tamar is done waiting. She takes action, disguises herself as a prostitute, sets herself up along the road where Judah is traveling. Judah, not recognizing her, propositions her. He promises a young goat as payment. But until he can deliver it, Tamar asks for collateral. Judah's seal, cord, and staff, the ancient equivalent of handing over your driver's license and credit cards. They sleep together. Tamar conceives. Weeks later, when Tamar's pregnancy shows, Judah, without knowing the full story, demands she be burned for immorality. But then Tamar drops the hammer. The father of my child is the man who owns this seal, cord, and staff. Judah's face burns with shame. He says, "She is more righteous than I, since I wouldn't give her to my son Shelah." Genesis 38:26. Tamar gives birth to twins, Perez and Zerah. Perez will go on to become the ancestor of King David, and through David, the bloodline of Jesus Christ himself. From scandal, deception, and brokenness, God forges a royal bloodline. Big takeaway: God can redeem any mess, even the ones drenched in scandal, shame, and sin. When humans fail, God's grace still blazes forward, unstoppable. Your biggest failure isn't the end of your story. God can weave redemption out of your worst chapters. Next up, we flash back to Joseph. Genesis 39, slave, servant, and about to face temptation that could destroy him or launch him higher. It's seduction, false accusations, and prison, and Joseph's integrity will be tested in fire. Ready to ride straight into Joseph's battle in Egypt? Let's go! Genesis 39. Joseph, now in Egypt, is bought by Potiphar, an official of Pharaoh, the captain of the guard, and God is with Joseph. Everything he touches prospers. Potiphar notices this and promotes him to oversee everything in his household. Joseph's life looks good on the outside, but there's a storm brewing. Enter Potiphar's wife, a woman with a dangerous agenda. She notices Joseph's good looks, and she wants him. Every day she tempts him. "Come to bed with me." But Joseph is a man of integrity. He refuses, and not just once, but repeatedly. How could I do such a wicked thing and sin against God? Genesis 39:9. But Potiphar's wife isn't used to being rejected. She's furious. And one day, when Joseph comes into the house alone, she grabs his coat, demanding again, "Come to bed with me." Joseph, in a split second, makes a life-altering decision. He runs. He literally flees from temptation, leaving his coat behind. But this only fuels the fire. Potiphar's wife uses the coat as evidence, accusing Joseph of attempted assault. She tells the story. "That Hebrew slave you brought in tried to make a mockery of me." Genesis 39:14-15. When Potiphar hears this, he furiously throws Joseph into prison, the same prison where Pharaoh's prisoners are kept. Joseph's life takes a sudden, shocking turn, from the high life in Potiphar's house to the cold, dark prison. But here's the twist. Even in prison, God is with Joseph. Joseph earns the trust of the warden, and soon, he's in charge of all the prisoners. God's favor never leaves him. Not in Potiphar's house, not in the prison. Big takeaway. Integrity might cost you everything, but it will never leave you empty. Joseph loses his freedom, his reputation, and his future in a single moment, yet he keeps his heart and God's favor. When you stand firm in your faith, even when it's hard, even when it's costly, God will make a way through the darkest moments. Next up, the story takes a fascinating turn. Joseph's path is about to intersect with Pharaoh's dreams. Genesis 40. Joseph in prison meets two high-ranking officials, and his interpretation of dreams sets the stage for his destiny to be catapulted. Ready to dive into dreams, destiny, and divine timing? Let's make it happen. Genesis 41. 2 years later, Pharaoh has two disturbing dreams that no one can interpret. In the first, 7 healthy cows are eaten by 7 thin, sickly cows. In the second, 7 healthy heads of grain are swallowed by 7 withered heads of grain. Pharaoh's magicians and wise men fail to interpret them. Then finally, the cupbearer remembers Joseph. He tells Pharaoh about the Hebrew slave who interpreted his dream in prison. Pharaoh calls for Joseph, and Joseph is brought out of the dungeon, shaved, cleaned up, and presented to Pharaoh. Joseph, standing before Pharaoh, says, "I cannot do it, but God will give Pharaoh the answer he desires." Genesis 41:16. Pharaoh shares his dreams, and Joseph interprets them with divine clarity. The 7 fat cows and 7 healthy ears of grain represent 7 years of abundance. The 7 skinny cows and 7 withered ears of grain represent 7 years of famine that will devour the abundance. Joseph advises Pharaoh to appoint someone to store up grain during the years of plenty so they can survive the famine. Pharaoh is blown away by Joseph's wisdom and discerns God's hand on him. Pharaoh elevates Joseph to second in command over all of Egypt, giving him authority to prepare for the coming years of famine. He gives Joseph a new name, Zaphanath-Paneah, and Joseph marries Asenath, the daughter of a priest. Joseph, at the age of 30, now has the authority and wealth of the nation at his fingertips. Big takeaway. Joseph's journey from the pit to the palace is marked by 2 things, faithfulness and timing. Even when others forget him, God remembers Joseph. Every setback is just a setup for a greater purpose. No matter how long it takes, God's timing is always perfect. Joseph's integrity, even in prison, leads to promotion, not just in status, but in his ability to serve others. God doesn't just elevate you for your own benefit. He raises you so you can help others in their time of need. Next up, the famine hits, and Joseph's brothers, desperate for food, come to Egypt. They stand before Joseph, not recognizing him. Genesis 42 is where the brothers face the very man they betrayed. It's payback time, and Joseph's test of forgiveness is about to begin. Time to see if Joseph's dream is bigger than revenge. Let's jump into it. Genesis 42 to 43. The famine is gripping the land, and Jacob and his sons are suffering. They hear there's grain in Egypt, so Jacob sends 10 of his sons to buy food. But he keeps Benjamin, his youngest, back, fearing something might happen to him as it did to Joseph. The brothers arrive in Egypt, and Joseph immediately recognizes them, but they don't recognize him. He's now the second in command of Egypt, dressed like an Egyptian ruler, speaking through an interpreter. Joseph tests them. He accuses them of being spies, sent to scout out Egypt's weaknesses. The brothers deny it, insisting they are honest men. Joseph isn't convinced. He demands one of them stay behind as a hostage, while the others return home to bring Benjamin back to prove they retelling the truth. The brothers' guilt and Joseph's first test, Genesis 42, continue. The brothers, conflicted and guilty, start to realize they're being punished for what they did to Joseph all those years ago. Surely we are being punished because of our brother Joseph. We saw how distressed he was when he pleaded with us for his life, but we refused to listen. Genesis 42 to 21. Joseph hears them, and he weeps secretly. But he regains control and orders Simeon to be bound and left behind. The rest of the brothers are allowed to return home with their grain, and with their silver secretly placed back in their sacks. When they discover the silver, they're horrified and think, "What is this that God has done to us?" Genesis 42:28. They return to their father, Jacob, and tell him everything. Jacob is devastated, but the situation gets even more intense when they have to tell him they must return with Benjamin. Judah's sacrifice and the second journey to Egypt. Genesis 43. The famine continues, and Jacob has no choice. He reluctantly agrees to send Benjamin back with the brothers to Egypt to buy more grain. Before they leave, Judah makes a powerful promise to his father. "I myself will guarantee his safety. You can hold me personally responsible for him." Genesis 43:9. The brothers head to Egypt with Benjamin, and Joseph sees them coming. He orders his steward to prepare a feast for them. The brothers, uneasy and fearful, think they're being set up to be accused of theft. But the steward reassures them, "Don't be afraid. Your God, the God of your father, has given you treasure in your sacks." Genesis 43:23. When they sit at the table, Joseph's emotions are overwhelming. He is so moved by the sight of Benjamin that he has to leave the room and weep. But he regains his composure and sets the stage for his final test. Big takeaway. Joseph's journey of forgiveness and reconciliation has layers. He tests his brothers not out of revenge, but to see if they have changed, if they are still the men who betrayed him, or if they have become true brothers. Their repentance and sacrifice for Benjamin prove they've turned the corner. God's plan is unfolding perfectly. The testing and the transformation of the brothers are setting the stage for the ultimate reunion. Joseph's wisdom in using these tests is showing them that forgiveness and love go hand in hand, and that restoration is possible even after the deepest betrayal. Next up, Joseph is about to reveal his true identity, and the reconciliation with his brothers will rock their world. Genesis 44:45, Judah's plea, Joseph's final test, and family restoration at last. This is where the story reaches its climactic emotional peak. Let's jump into it. Genesis 44:45. The moment of truth has arrived. Joseph's final test for his brothers is set in motion. He orders his silver cup to be placed in Benjamin's sack before they depart Egypt. After they leave, Joseph sends his steward after them, accusing them of stealing his cup. The brothers, in shock and disbelief, swear their innocence, even offering that whoever is found with the cup should die. When Benjamin's sack is opened, the cup is found, and their worst fear is realized. They return to Joseph's palace, broken-hearted, knowing that Benjamin will be imprisoned and that their father, Jacob, will be devastated once again. Judah, the same Judah who once sold Joseph into slavery, now steps up with incredible courage and selflessness. He pleads for Benjamin's life, saying, "Please let your servant remain here as my lord's slave in place of the boy, and let the boy return with his brothers." Genesis 44:33. Judah's sacrifice marks the turning point for the brothers. He's no longer the man who betrayed Joseph. He's now willing to give everything to save his family. Joseph, overcome with emotion, can no longer hide his identity. He orders everyone to leave the room. He weeps openly and then declares to his brothers, "I am Joseph. Is my father still living?" Genesis 45:3. The brothers are frozen in shock, unable to believe their ears. Joseph, the brother they betrayed, is standing before them as the ruler of Egypt. But Joseph immediately reassures them, saying, "Don't be distressed and don't be angry with yourselves for selling me here, because it was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you." Genesis 45:5. Joseph explains that God's purpose was greater than their betrayal. The famine wasn't just a disaster. It was part of God's plan to preserve life, to save Egypt, and to preserve the line of Israel. Joseph forgives them completely, embracing them with love and mercy. He orders them to go back to Canaan, bring Jacob and their families, and live in the land of Goshen. He gives them the best of Egypt, carts, clothes, and food, to bring the entire family to Egypt. The brothers are restored and the family is reunited. Genesis 45 continued. The brothers return to Canaan, and when they tell Jacob that Joseph is alive, he can't believe it at first. But when he sees the gifts and hears the story, his heart is revived. It is enough. My son Joseph is still alive. I will go and see him before I die. Genesis 45:28. Jacob and his family make their way to Egypt, and when they meet Joseph, the reunion is overwhelming. Joseph weeps as he embraces his father, and the entire family is reunited after years of suffering and separation. Joseph's family is settled in the land of Goshen, the fertile region of Egypt, where they will thrive for the years to come. Pharaoh welcomes them, and God blesses them abundantly. Big takeaway: forgiveness and redemption come at a cost, but they are worth it. Joseph's journey from betrayal to reconciliation teaches us that God's plans are bigger than our pain, and that forgiveness brings restoration. Judah's sacrifice for Benjamin and Joseph's mercy towards his brothers show us that true leadership comes from a heart of compassion and selflessness. God used their failures to bring about his greater purpose. When we are wronged or betrayed, the story of Joseph reminds us that forgiveness is the path to healing, and restoration is possible even in the darkest times. Next up, Joseph and his family are settled in Egypt, but the end of an era is coming. Genesis 46-47 will show us how God's promise to Abraham is beginning to be fulfilled, but the life of Joseph will take a turn. The stage is set for the next chapter of Israel's story. Ready for the next step in this epic? Let's go. Genesis 46-47. The journey continues. With the good news that Joseph is alive and his family will be provided for in Egypt, Jacob packs up everything and begins the long journey to see his son. Before he sets off, he offers sacrifices to God at Beersheba. There, God speaks to him in a dream, reaffirming the promise he made to Abraham and Isaac. God tells him, "Do not be afraid to go down to Egypt, for I will make you into a great nation there. I will go down to Egypt with you, and I will surely bring you back again." Genesis 46:3-4. Jacob is reassured, and with God's blessing, he moves forward. The family, all 70 of them, including Jacob's sons and their children, make their way to Goshen, the land in Egypt where Joseph has already provided for them. Joseph meets them at the border, and the reunion is overwhelming as Jacob sees Joseph's face after so many years of heartache. "Now I am ready to die, since I have seen for myself that you are still alive." Genesis 46:30. Joseph settles his family in Goshen. Genesis 47. Joseph takes Jacob and the brothers to meet Pharaoh, who is deeply impressed by Jacob's wisdom. Jacob and Pharaoh have a brief but powerful conversation about life and age, and Jacob blesses Pharaoh, recognizing God's hand in his journey. Joseph then presents his brothers and father to Pharaoh, and Pharaoh graciously offers them the best of the land of Egypt, settling them in Goshen. Goshen is ideal, fertile, abundant, and perfect for their flocks and herds. The famine continues. Joseph's wise leadership, Genesis 47, continued. As the famine worsens, people from all over Egypt and the surrounding lands come to Joseph for help. They've run out of money and food, so Joseph begins to buy their land and their livestock in exchange for food. Eventually, people have nothing left but their own lives, and they offer themselves as slaves to Pharaoh in exchange for food. Joseph uses this moment to secure Egypt's future. Even though many Egyptians have sold themselves into Pharaoh's service, Joseph ensures that the land and people are well taken care of. Through wisdom, Joseph has turned a crisis into an opportunity for Egypt to thrive. Meanwhile, Jacob's family flourishes in Goshen. They become prosperous and grow into a mighty nation, just as God had promised to Abraham. Big takeaway: God's promises are unshakable, even in the face of hardship and uncertainty. Despite the challenges of famine, Joseph's leadership and faithfulness are key to saving Egypt and his family. The promise to Abraham is now being fulfilled as Israel finds a new home in Egypt. This moment in history marks the beginning of a new chapter for God's people. Jacob's journey from Canaan to Egypt reminds us that sometimes the path to God's purpose isn't easy, but it's always part of his plan. When we trust God's timing and his promises, he will guide us through the darkest times and lead us into the future he has prepared for us. Next up, as Jacob's family settles in Egypt, we enter the final chapters of Genesis. The end of Jacob's life and the blessings of his sons are about to unfold, setting the stage for the future of the 12 tribes of Israel. Genesis 48:49 will bring us to the conclusion of this incredible journey. Ready for the final chapters? Let's dive in. Genesis 48-49. Jacob's time is near. As his life draws to a close, he calls for Joseph and his two sons, Manasseh and Ephraim. Jacob, now old and frail, must pass on the blessing, a sacred act that shapes destiny. Joseph brings his sons forward, expecting Manasseh, the firstborn, to receive the greater blessing. But Jacob crosses his arms, placing his right hand on Ephraim the younger. Joseph tries to correct him, but Jacob refuses, declaring that Ephraim will become greater than Manasseh, though both will be blessed. He too will become a people, and he too will be great. Nevertheless, his younger brother will be greater than he. Genesis 48:19. This moment is huge. Once again, God chooses the unexpected, flipping human tradition on its head. The blessing flows not by birth order, but by God's divine plan. Jacob also officially adopts Ephraim and Manasseh as his own sons, giving Joseph a double portion of inheritance, a reward for Joseph's faithfulness and suffering. The prophetic blessings of the 12 sons, Genesis 49. Jacob then gathers all his sons around his deathbed for a final prophetic blessing, a powerful moment where he speaks the future over each of them. Reuben, the firstborn, strong but unstable, he loses leadership because he defiled his father's bed. Simeon and Levi, violent and reckless. They are scattered among Israel, their anger costing them their inheritance. Judah, the lion, the leadership and kingship will come through his line. The scepter will not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from between his feet. Genesis 49:10. From Judah's line will come King David, and ultimately the Messiah, Jesus. Zebulun, a haven for ships, a people of trade. Issachar, strong but subjected to hard labor. Dan, a judge of his people, but also associated with treachery. Gad, a warrior overcoming enemies. Asher, blessed with rich food and delicacies. Naphtali, a free and fruitful people. Joseph, a fruitful vine, immensely blessed, protected, and exalted. Benjamin, a ravenous wolf, fierce and victorious in battle. Each son's blessing or warning shapes the future tribes of Israel. Destinies are set, nations are born, and God's grand narrative moves forward. Jacob's deathbed instructions. Genesis 49 continued. Jacob finishes by commanding his sons to bury him in the family tomb, the cave in Machpelah, where Abraham, Sarah, Isaac, Rebekah, and Leah are buried. There I buried Abraham and Sarah, Isaac and Rebekah, and there I buried Leah. Genesis 49:31. Jacob breathes his last, and with strength and peace, he gathers his feet into the bed and joins his ancestors. The patriarch of Israel has passed, but his legacy is only just beginning. Big takeaway: your choices today shape your legacy tomorrow. Jacob's blessings reveal that character matters. Ambition without control leads to downfall. Reuben, Simeon, Levi. But leadership rooted in faith and obedience brings kingship and honor. Judah, Joseph. God's promises will always override human expectations. He chooses the unexpected to carry out the extraordinary. Ephraim over Manasseh, Judah over Reuben. God writes his story through surprising people, including you. Next up, Jacob is gone, and now Joseph's brothers fear his revenge. Genesis 50 will show us Joseph's final test. Will he seek revenge or forgiveness? The ending of Genesis is powerful. Let's see how it all wraps up. Ready to roll into the final chapter? Genesis 50. Jacob is dead. Grief hangs heavy over Egypt and Canaan. Joseph weeps over his father, embracing him one last time, and then orders his physicians to embalm Jacob, a process that takes 40 days. Pharaoh honors Joseph's mourning and gives permission for a royal funeral procession. It's massive. Chariots, officials, elders of Egypt and Canaan, Joseph's brothers, servants, a nation mourning a patriarch. They bury Jacob in the cave of Machpelah, exactly as Jacob had commanded, full circle back to the land God had promised Abraham. The brothers' fear and Joseph's greatest act of mercy, Genesis 50, continued. With Jacob gone, the brothers panic. They're terrified that Joseph, with all his power, will now take revenge for what they did to him. They send messengers begging for forgiveness. Before he died, your father gave this command. Say to Joseph, please forgive your brothers. Genesis 50:16-17. Joseph's response is breathtaking. He weeps again, not out of anger, but because they still don't realize he has truly forgiven them. He reassures them, don't be afraid. Am I in the place of God? You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good, to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives. Genesis 50:19-20. Joseph chooses grace over vengeance. He promises to provide for them and their children. He comforts them and speaks kindly to them. Mercy triumphs over judgment. Love breaks the cycle of fear and guilt. Joseph's legacy and final words. Joseph lives to 110 years old, long enough to see 3 generations of his descendants. Before he dies, he makes the Israelites swear that when God brings them out of Egypt, because he surely will, they must carry his bones back to the promised land. Joseph's final words are words of faith. God will surely come to your aid and take you up out of this land, to the land he promised on oath to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Genesis 50:24. Genesis ends with a coffin in Egypt, a reminder that though the patriarchs are gone, God's promises are alive, and the story is far from over. Big takeaway. When wronged, we have a choice: vengeance or forgiveness. Joseph's decision to forgive set a foundation of hope for an entire nation. Forgiveness doesn't erase the past. It transforms it into a testimony of God's goodness. What was meant for evil, God flips for ultimate good. You can choose mercy and be part of God's bigger story. Next up, Genesis closes, but the adventure explodes into the next generation. Exodus begins, a new era of slavery, deliverance, and the rise of a nation under God's mighty hand. Ready to crack open the epic story of Moses and the Exodus? Let's dive into Exodus 1-2 next. Are you ready?
Watching daily Bible stories. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the bell, and keep growing in faith. See you next time.